right now. The MLB Pennant race is a lot of fun right now. We got a lot of different little things going on with that, and pretty much MLB Pennant race. You have up first. Let's get into the AL East. The AL East is starting to kind of open itself up a little bit. You know what I mean? You got the Baltimore still 2.5 up. You know, the Rays staying steady. Still got the best run differential in the league at plus 188 right now, but still they are 2.5 games out, but they've won their last 7 out of 10. But for them, it's bad because Baltimore's won their last 7 out of 10. Then you have the Blue Jays who find themselves now 10.5 games behind Baltimore. Who would have thunk it? We would have never even assumed that that was going to happen. And then you got Boston, who's 14.5 games out of first place right now as well, too. And then the Yankees, as we all know, they're pretty much out of it. They're 68 and 69. Yankees won their last 7 out of 10, but, you know, at the end of the day, they're 17.5 games out. Nobody cares no more. Minnesota, Cleveland. We'll be talking about that in a moment, but Minnesota is exactly 5 games ahead of Cleveland right now. And this is a very important series that's coming up this week between these two teams because they do play 3 times this week. And I think this is going to be their final meetings of the season as well, too. So this is really critical, you know, to tiebreakers and things like that. The Guardians have a big advantage because they're at home. And usually when they're at home, it can help their momentum out just a little bit. But other than that, nobody else in this division is really in the mix. You know, Detroit's 8 back, but Detroit is a team that's going through transition right now, and they actually overachieved this season. They did a lot better than any of us expected, but they're still a bad team at the end of the day. But 63 and 74 is a lot better than what any of us could have really thunk of, to be honest with you. And then we have the White Sox, 53 and 84. Just downright dreadful. 18 games out of first place at this moment. Lost their last 7 out of 10. It's really, when does the season end? Get me to Cancun as fast as possible, it seems like, for the White Sox. Then you have Kansas City, who lost their last 8 out of 10. Nobody cares. 42 and 96. It looks like they'll be well under, like I had already put together for this year. Then we have Seattle. Seattle is the 3rd best team in the American League, okay? And they are still in first place for the 2nd week in a row. They are a game ahead of both Texas and Houston, who are pretty much deadlocked, but they are separated by a funny stat. You got Houston, who has more wins, and then you have Houston, who has more losses. That's the funny part about it, because you have Texas 76 and 60 and Houston 77 and 61. So they are in a deadlock for the 2nd place spot. And then you have the Angels, who've lost their last 7 out of 10, pretty much threw up the white flag. All those guys that they signed up and traded for and all that good stuff, those guys are now playing on different teams. Dude, Lucas Giolito is starting for the Guardians today. So, yeah, the Angels 64 and 73 right now. They are just going through the motions, and the A's are tied up 42 to 95 for the worst record in the league with the Royals. Okay, now you have the NL East. You have the Braves with the biggest lead out of anybody. They lead their division by 15 games, but funny thing is, Philadelphia is the number 1 wild card team. So they're ahead of the number 1 wild card team by 15 games. They've won their last 8 out of 10. Miami had a good weekend this weekend. They actually look like they've won their last 4 in a row. And they actually are even in their last 10. But it's looking pretty good. They're 70 and 67 right now, but they find themselves 20.5 games out of the first place spot. So, yeah, they're going through it as well, too. Then you got the Mets, who are 63 and 74. We all know we threw the Mets away a while ago. The Mets pretty much told us that it was over and done with when they traded Scherzer and Verlander. And then we have Washington, 62 and 76. They've overachieved big time. As I already said, they went over their total win amount, which was 59. They they went over. It was beautiful to see. They were actually seen as one of the worst teams coming into baseball this year, and they've absolutely became one of the better stories in the league. Even though they still have a losing record, they're still one of the better stories in the league. Milwaukee has finally pretty much found their flow. They find themselves down. They find themselves up 3.5 games over the Cubbies, who find themselves up 3 games over the Reds at this point. And so pretty much the Reds are now 6.5 games out, but they're still in the playoff picture as of today. And they're actually in the playoff picture. They're in the playoffs to be exact. So, yeah, actually, no, they're not in the playoffs. I'm sorry. Arizona actually owns the tiebreak situation over them because they're 70-67, and they're better than San Francisco by the tiebreak, and so that makes Cincinnati be on the outside looking in, but really it's a three-way. It's really a three-way tie, but Arizona owns the tiebreaker, and then you throw Miami in there, so you have a four-way situation for that final wild card spot right now, and that's absolutely nuts. And then you have Philly and Chicago holding down the first two wild card spots. So that is going to show you how much parity is going out there. You got Tampa Bay, Texas, and Houston all in the wild card spot. And then you have Toronto, who's a game and a half out. So this series is critical for the winner of the Astros and the Rangers, because it looks like it looks like Toronto's in for a week where they should win 2 out of 3 against the A's or sweep one or the other. And that puts them in a cherry spot to be in the playoffs by the end of the weekend. So there's just a lot to get into. The MLB playoffs are absolutely sensational right now. And once again, the San Diego Padres are still 20 games behind the Dodgers. So, for everybody quick reminder for everybody who thought the Dodgers was going to fall off and it was time for the Padres, well, we haven't arrived at that moment yet. So, with that, let's go ahead and move forward and talk about some games. And the game that we have up first is going to be the Mariners and the Reds. The Mariners coming to this game 77-59. You got a Reds team 71-68. This Reds team has truly struggled in the last month or so. They're not as good as they were when they got in the first place. Had won 12 in a row? They had won a lot of games in a row, 6 in a row here, then another 6 in a row, then 8 in a row.